positive peeps, you're listening to another episode of Staying Positive with Paula, a podcast that welcomes guest speakers and listeners to talk openly about inner positivity and my possibly controversial belief that we all have more optimism than we might think. The guests I've invited are some of the most amazing individuals I've had the pleasure of meeting, but not only that, they're all individuals I have found to have an overwhelming amount of inner positivity and optimism, which heavily impacts those around them. My hope for this podcast is not only to share more about the speakers with the rest of the world, because I think we'd all benefit simply by being around them more, listening and hearing from them more, but also to invite each listener to open their minds about themselves and reflect on just how positive they are. I hope everyone pauses more throughout the day and pats themselves on the back for simply getting through each day, because I really believe that that's a huge feat in and of itself. So without further ado, it is my extreme pleasure to announce professional model and content creator Lauren Hyun to the show. Welcome, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
I want to go ahead and get started because I know that we just have so much to learn from you and there's so much to cover. But there are some questions that I like to ask each of the guests who come on, and the overall hope is that each conversation will be unique, of course, to each speaker, and then we'll always have an open conversation that goes any way the wind blows. So are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, great. So the first question I like to ask every guest is, who is the guest to the guest? So who is Lauren Hyun to Lauren Hyun?
To introduce myself, I am Lauren Hyun. I am turning 25 next month, so that's a little bit of an exciting phase for me. I've always looked forward to being 25. And I'm a graduate from Georgetown University with a marketing degree with a minor in French. And I started my content creation journey about sophomore year in college. I would say that I had been prepping it for a long time. I was very interested in content creation and photography specifically ever since high school. And I had a little bit of a photography business ever since then. I would take senior photos for younger kids at my school, and then I would continue that throughout college. I would say me, I guess a little bit of information about me is I'm an Aries, I am an ENFJ, I'm a big planner, I love lists, and that's kind of how I get through my day.
That is amazing, and I love how guests kind of introduce themselves and everybody offers a different detail, and I love how you kind of went through your personality traits and also just the fact that you're an Aries. And I kind of wanted to ask more about the beginning of your career. And you and I met at college, of course, but before that, before I even met you, and you said that you were always kind of interested in photography, do you think that that comes from just you as who you are, or does that stem from any familial ties? Where did that passion kind of come from?
Yeah, so actually my uncle, so my mom's older brother, he used to own a photo studio in Torrance. So he was the first professional photographer of the family that I know of. And my entire family is kind of very artistic. On my dad's side, they had a dress business. So they were in the fashion district, and my grandma sold prom dresses, wedding dresses, things like that in her shop. My dad's older sister also designed dresses and had a factory with that. And so my entire family has been very creative. And then I got really into it after I saw my cousin, so my uncle's son. He was really into photography and getting into portrait photography, so I helped model so he can get practice in his portrait photography. And I got really interested in learning more of the behind the scenes, because I honestly used to hate getting my photo taken up until probably college.
Yeah.
So I learned all of the behind the scenes. I learned Photoshop and Lightroom through YouTube, and a lot of different manual settings for the camera through YouTube. And there's a lot of information out there. So that's how I kind of got started.
I know that you said that you kind of also didn't want to be in front of the camera at first. I'd love to hear your take as well, but I think positivity also sometimes is in the same bucket as confidence. And I was just curious, where did you start to get that confidence? And do you think that that confidence kind of has helped you to develop sort of your positive outward take when you are content creating?
Yeah, so I was actually super introverted and super shy up until college. And in college, I decided, you know what, I don't want to be a shy person anymore. So in freshman year, I honestly took a step to rebrand and reinvent myself. And I faked it until I made it. I don't know if that's the best way for everyone to go about it, but after my freshman year, I think that's when my personality started to really come out, and I truly was more extroverted. I still am pretty selective about the social settings that I choose to be in, but I would say that I generally love meeting new people. I love hearing other people's stories, and I feel like I generally have an outlook that most people have good intentions and good hearts, and that's what I like to believe. And in terms of staying positive and gaining confidence, I would say I take a more self-critical / analytical approach. I see I reflect a lot on what I like about myself, what maybe areas of improvement that I have to work on. Just continue to be introspective and kind of take an overall look at what things that maybe I didn't like the way that I reacted to a certain situation at one point, and kind of being cognizant of that the next time and just taking it from there.
For you, do you think that when you feel really confident, do you also feel very positive in that moment?
I would say I have the more energy to be positive when I'm confident, because there's not as much on my plate to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like being confident reduces the number of things that I have to think about.
Yeah.
And that's on my plate at that time. So it leaves more room for me and more energy for me to be positive.
Okay, part of the reason I thought of this podcast is because of my somewhat controversial belief that we as humans are all more positive inside than we might think. First, I just want to stop there and kind of get your take on that. Would you agree? Do you think that we're all, as humans, more positive than we might give ourselves credit for?
Yes. I think there's a lot of potential to be a lot more positive than we are in this day and age. And I think what that looks like for everyone is different. I know for me, I needed to stop, because I'm a very empathetic person, and I feel a lot and I get overwhelmed very easily. So in terms of like the era of Stop Asian Hate and like feminist movement, and just during like the Roe v. Wade as well, it was very draining for me in terms of energy, because I was focusing so much on the negative aspects of it as well. So for me, I kind of did have to tune myself out for a lot of the information. I would get general outtakes from things, but I realized for myself I just needed to kind of take a break from indulging myself in those topics as much.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is really hard, because the nature of your job, you're kind of expected to be on social media, which always kind of invites the chance to see the news. What's that been like for you? What are the things that you do? Do you take, for instance, do you take time aside and you purposely take the time aside and then you go back to your phone to do your work? Or did you actually have to take a complete pause from social media? What does that kind of look like for you as you navigate those negative moments or those gray clouds?
Yeah, I tried to just assess what my priorities are at this time.
Yeah.
Or in the time that I am at. So I would say about 3 years ago, my priority was to constantly create and just get content out there, increase my following, make sure I build myself a brand. And I think in this time of my life, I prioritize my peace more. I really value the time that I have with my friends and just being present in the moment versus kind of being aware of what, not irrelevant, but more people who I don't know in actual life, what they think of me. So I think my priority right now is just to live the most peaceful life that I can.
Yeah, no, 100%. Honestly, recently moved to the city. I'm not really near my support system, my immediate support system as much. For instance, I'm a huge family girl, and I've just realized that I've had to, like you said, in those moments, when you can assess your priorities. For me, it used to be immediate after work, you log off, and my immediate thought was family, and it's still the case, but I can't physically be with them as much. And I know that I used to get a lot of just positive vibes from them, and that's kind of how I de-stress from after a really long day of work, for example. So nowadays, for me, I have to go out and find specific things that I know will bring me a little bit of joy and just that same kind of notion of de-stressing. What are ways that you go out and kind of celebrate yourself and get yourself to acknowledge the fact that you're de-stressing now, and this is going to be me and Lauren time?
Yeah, I'm a very active person, very physically active all of my life ever since childhood. I haven't really been consistent in that in probably after high school because I stopped ballet.
Yeah.
But I think ever since last summer, when I started working at Lululemon especially, it really encouraged me to be active more consistently. So I've been exploring different kinds of activities that I really enjoy. I got really into hot yoga, and I do like kickboxing, Pilates, and I started learning some pole dancing. So so it's a really good workout. And then other activities I like to do somewhat less frequently, but I would say like climbing, snowboarding during the winter times. Not really opposed to trying anything new, at least once.
And how often do you think you celebrate yourself?
Yeah, I would say I would treat myself in terms of shopping, and it got to the point where it was not healthy anymore. So I had to stop with that, definitely, and be a little bit more strict with my budget. But I also am a huge foodie. I love researching new cafes in the area, new restaurants, different foods to try. So I'd say those are my little treats. I know I can have coffee at home, but when I go out, and I feel like you're paying for the more so the atmosphere and the environment versus what you're actually drinking, which it's nice if the drink is actually great. But I think honestly just sitting there and like people watching is what I enjoy.
That is actually so valid. I didn't really think about it like that. I think subconsciously I thought about it like that, where you're going out, you're treating yourself to a coffee. I am so frugal, Lauren. Literally, it takes a lot for me to just go and buy a Starbucks coffee, but that's just a really great approach to it. And I think that kind of brings me around the topic of perspective. So I was just curious, have you always considered yourself, and do you consider yourself to be a positive person? And do you find yourself falling on that spectrum of more positive? And when you do, what's generally the perspective that you have? The glass half full, glass empty?
I would say for me, I see myself as more of a resilient person.
Okay.
So I don't force myself to be positive all the time.
Yeah.
I let myself feel the emotions and kind of process through that, because I used to be very not unaware of my emotions, but in terms of like I didn't want to deal with them, I didn't want to process them, so I kind of just ignore like all sorts of negative feelings, but it does pile up and it does come out at some point. And so I'm trying to change that form of the way I process those negative emotions. And I think it's been helping a lot with, so it doesn't pile up inside and I'm feeling sad for maybe like an hour of my day versus like getting taken out for a whole day or even a week sometimes because I didn't think things through at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's helping a lot. And there's the term, I don't recall exactly, but it was like the forced positivity, where when people like tell you something and then you're like, oh, everything will work out, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Instead of like actually kind of talking through the situation and kind of allowing for those negative emotions. So I think just as much as I am positive, I do allow room to feel otherwise.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about is toxic positivity, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Toxic positivity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think toxic positivity is a thing. But I think for me, the last thing that I'd love to kind of get your take on is the fact that going back to the fact that we don't really celebrate ourselves enough. For you too, you always motivate your viewers to be who they are, and you always imbue just kind of a lot of what I would consider very positive thoughts. And I was just curious, what if you could share just your overall advice to everyone, what is your hope that you see more people doing in society?
I think it definitely helps to kind of keep a perspective that everyone is human and to not take things personally. If someone is being mean to you, it's probably 99% not to do about you, but it's just how they were in that moment and in that day. And I kind of like to think about it in that way because it's, I guess, easier for me to process.
Yeah.
And I just try not to take things personally anymore. And I value my opinion of myself greater than a stranger on the street who may have said something to kind of tick me off, or someone who's mean to me throughout the day. I just kind of brush it off and I don't let myself dwell in that moment for a long time. I think a lot of people tend to have, it's almost like, I don't know how to say it, but they kind of indulge in sadness. And they like to dwell in those negative emotions, and almost to the point where it's like a victim mindset, where it's not healthy anymore to kind of think about that. So I think before you get too indulgent in those negative feelings, just say, oh, okay, that happened, and then move on with your day is what I've kind of been doing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's kind of unfortunate, at least for me, when I hear people talking about mental health, it usually to me seems as if it has a bad or a negative connotation with mental health, that someone is more on the negative side and that they're trying to get through mental health, as if mental health is necessarily right away something that's a little bit negative. But for me, I think mental health actually means us kind of assessing just how positive we actually are. And on the flip side of thinking mental health as a really positive thing, and I think more and more people are realizing that and saying that, like, are you taking care of your mental health in the sense that, are you good? Like, are you positive? And for me, I think that's really the hope for this podcast, is for us to just kind of, even if you're not feeling one way or the other, positive or negative, but like you said, just resilient and you're getting through your day. For me, it might just be, rather than just resilient and getting through something, but are you just existing? Are you just living? And that's a huge, for me, that's a huge win already, is that you're getting through the day. That's a huge thing that humans have to do. And I think that's just kind of where I want to end it. If you have anything that you'd like to add to, but thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on the show and kind of giving your take from a content creator's perspective on just inner positivity and talking with me on my semi-controversial beliefs as to just how positive we actually all are.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great speaking with you and talking about positivity.